Welcome. You have all just seen two amazing puppet films, The Departure of Atsumori and The Death of Atsumori, two stories about the young warrior Atsumori from the epic tale of the Haika, if I'm pronouncing that right. These performances by the Hachioji Koruma Ningyo Puppet Theater Company of Japan feature master puppeteer Koryu Nishikawa V with us here, and the traditional Japanese puppet technique known as Koruma Ningyo, in which the puppeteers perform while seated on a small wheeled seat or cart. We now have time for a discussion with Mr. Nishikawa and scholars Elizabeth Oyler and Claudia Orenstein, and Yuko Eguchi-Wright will be translating for Mr. Nishikawa. Master puppeteer Koryu Nishikawa V is currently the head of the Koryu Nishikawa troupe located in Hachioji, Tokyo. My apologies if I mispronounce words. Since his childhood, he received training from his grandfather, the third generation master, and his father, fourth generation master. He also studied three-person bunraku puppet techniques at the National Bunraku Theater. In addition to annual performances in Hachioji, Koryu Nishikawa V and the troupe are frequently invited to performing engagements throughout Japan as well as around the world. And at the end of this discussion, I think Mr. Nishikawa is going to talk about an upcoming tour of the United States, which is very exciting indeed. Claudia Orenstein is a theater professor at Hunter College and the CUNY Graduate Center, and has spent nearly 2 decades researching and writing on contemporary and traditional puppetry in the US and Asia. Her recent publications include Women in Puppetry, Critical and Historical Investigations, edited together with Alyssa Mello and Cariat Astles, and the Rutledge Companion to Puppetry and Material Performance, which she edited with Dacia Posner and myself. Claudia was dramaturg for Tom Lee and Master Koryu Nishikawa V's show Shank's Mare, which I saw, amazing show, and for Stephen Earnhardt's multimedia production, Wind Up Bird Chronicle. She's a board member of Unima USA and associate editor of Asian Theater Journal. And she's working on reading The Puppet Stage, essays on the dramaturgy of performing objects, very exciting, and the 2-volume forthcoming anthology, Puppet and Spirit, Ritual, Religion, and Performing Objects. And has many other things that she's doing as well. Elizabeth Oyler is Associate Professor of Japanese in the Department of East Asian Languages and Literatures at the University of Pittsburgh, and her research focuses on the representation of historical and cultural memory in literature and performing arts from Japan's medieval period, particularly the 15th century. Super exciting. She's the author of Swords, Oaths, and Prophetic Visions, authoring Warrior Rule in Medieval Japan, and co-editor with Michael G. Watson of Like Clouds or Mists, Studies and Translations of No Plays of the Genpei War, as well as articles on medieval narrative and performance traditions. A second co-edited volume, Cultural Imprints, War and Memory in the Samurai Age, was published in 2022, February of this year, by Cornell University Press, and she's working on a book-length study of no drama, specifically how the staging of a set of no plays about the Genpei War by early playwrights simultaneously codified and undermined spaces of the poetic and social landscapes of the early 15th century. So exciting. And Yuko Eguchi-Wright, our translator, teaches music, if I'm not incorrect, at the East Asian Languages and Literatures program of the University of Pittsburgh. So folks watching this will have just seen the screening of these two films, The Departure of Atsumori and The Death of Atsumori. And now we want to begin this discussion with Professor Oyler and Professor Orenstein and Nishikawa, Mr. Nishikawa. So I thought to ask Claudia to begin this discussion with some questions that you have for Mr. Nishikawa.
Okay, thank you, John. I guess I'd like to start by, these epic tales and the plays we've looked at are so emotional. And I'm wondering if the puppeteers have to in any way feel the emotion in order to impart it to the puppet, or is it really just about technique and the puppets move in such a stylized, specific way? Is it just getting the technique right, or is there a mix of that and some kind of balance?
先生、まずは最初に人形使いとして、登場人物の感情を一旦自分の中に引き入れてからそれを人形に吹き込むことを大事だとお考えですか？でそれともむしろテクニックに関するもので人形を正しく動かすこと型みたいな感じですよねによって感情を表現するようにされていますか？もしくはその2つの間でバランスをとってこう人形使いになっていられるんでしょうか？
作品によってちょっと違うんですが、基本的な古典の作品っていうのはある程度形っていうものが決まっているんですが、新しい作品をやる時っていうのはまずその台本を理解することがとても人形使いでは大事なんですね。もちろん台本をこうきちっと理解してでその後自分たちの中で動きを決めていきます。さっき言ったように型を決めていきます。で、そのまま浄瑠璃がこう出来上がって作品として出来上がった時にその浄瑠璃をどう語っていくのかどういう表現するのかという太夫さんたちの感情表現があると思います。で、そこに合わせて人形を動かすんですがそれに合わせてその思いとか感情とかっていうのを人形使いが作り上げていく。ですからまずその順番にこういきますとその台本が理解してそしてその動きを決めてそして浄瑠璃が出来上がった時に浄瑠璃の語り手とどういうふうに表現をしてどういうふうな語りをしているかということによってこちらもそれにどういう感情表現を付け加えていくかということを形としてはやっていくということになります。
わかりました。So what he is usually thinking about is that it depends on which production or the works that he deals with. It's older one or new ones, but it depends. But mostly what he does is he focuses on the script first, and then he decides what to do with the puppet. So it's about the movement of those puppets. So it's more like a kata, the form itself that he creates, and then there's the joruri, the music part that gets added. So those musicians, they put their own emotions to that goes along with the script and the story, and so their emotions is the one that the puppeteers, they will listen to it and they see it, and then they're going to add that emotion into each characters. But so it all starts with the understanding of the script, the story, and the character itself. But then it has to be involved along with the musicians and their performance and their emotions to it. I hope that I'm translating right.
Answer, actually. I was thinking, since we've been talking about kata and technique, I'm sure a lot of people don't know how these kuruma ningyo puppets are manipulated, and I think it would be helpful to get a sense if Nishikawa Sensei could show us how that happens. He's got a puppet there. So.
That's right. こちらを見られてる方たちはその型とか形とかについてあまりご存知ない方がいらっしゃるかと思うので、先生の後ろにちょうどお人形が見えるのでもしできましたら型を少し見せていただけると嬉しいんですけれども。ということです。
ちょっと今ここに裸の人形がありますけども、はい。
There is a naked puppet right here. No clothes on it.
もちろんちょっと今足が見えないのであれですけども、上半身で言いますとこう、基本的な形っていうのがこう、人形にはこうあったりします。ちょっと目線を使うんですけど。で、まず力強さを表現をするとかっていうところがこうあると思うんですけど、それは男性ですからこう力をこう表現する。この一つの動きの形の中でこうものを表現をしていくっていう、こうスタイルというかポーズがあるわけですね。 で、そのポーズをこう使っていくという、まあ、女性が泣くときとか男性が泣くときとかっていうこう表現が違いますけども、だから男性の場合はちょっとこう上をこう向きながらこのくらいでこう一つのこう泣く形をこう作っていく。
That's how the puppet cries. But what he showed you earlier was just only the top part of the body. He can't show the legs, but he was trying to express the strength of this male puppet. And then he just showed you how the puppet cries. So there is a pose to each emotional expressions to each of the puppets.
まあ、最も分かりやすいのは物を刺したりするときっていうのは、まあ、通常皆さんこうやって刺しますけども、ここの時に実は逆にちょっとこうちょっとだけ人形のこう振っていくと一つの形が大きくなる。まあ、物を刺すのはただこう線で刺すんではなくて、全ての演技の中は円として描きながらこう人形の表現をしていって一つの形に入っていくわけですね。足が出たら手がこういうふうに動いて、次にこういうふうな形になってこうちょっと画面が小さいからあれですけど一つのポーズにこうなっていくという、こうある程度の一つの形の順番がこうあるわけです。
Okay, so there is
so
the kata is it's about the form. It's a pause, but it's not just like, you know, you're pointing at something just like this. There is a way to make it kind of like exaggerated and trying to focus into one direction. And so it's kind of like he's trying to draw a circle as he moved the puppet. But that's a type of the kata, the form, that how you show the each moment and then also the direction of the body of the puppets and stuff.
Could we explain? Could we explain for audiences who might not know what exactly kata is? That might not be a familiar term for people.
Okay, 型について先生はどういうふうにご説明されますか？そのデフィニッションっていうか定義ですね。どういうふうにお考えですか？
やはりその日本の人形っていうのが一つのスタイルがありますよね。で、そのスタイルを最大限に生かしたもの。まあ、人間では表現できないような動きっていうのもこの人形の型の特徴なんですね。
なるほど。
ですからその力強さ、そして優しさ、いろんな表現がその型の中に含まれているんです。ですからまあ、もうちょっとこう詳しく言うと、文楽さんと車人形さんでは違うんですが、まあ、文楽さんって3人で使っていくことによって要は文楽さんっていうのは型の表現、型で表現をしていく。で、その型の中に感情を入れていく。ところが車人形っていうのは実はそこまでの型ができないので、やはり感情中心とした型みたいなものっていうのを車人形では大事にしているということ。
Okay, so what he was telling is that comparing to the regular bunraku, which you see in Osaka, those are manipulated by 3 puppeteers at once, and they are more focused on the form by the expression, the emotional expression by the each form. But for the kuruma ningyo, his puppeteer is only one person manipulating one puppet, and so he has to basically go along with as they move manipulate the puppet. They have to create each form and then to express the emotions as he goes, as he performs with it.
I wondered if we might politely ask Mr. Nishikawa to leave some gaps so that you could translate more directly some of the really important and exciting things he's saying, rather than having to translate one longer statement.
Okay. すいません、西川先生。もしできましたら、お答えになるとき、もうちょっと短くしていただければ、その当時で、通訳させていただきますので。
わかりました。
すいません。Sorry.
いえいえ、すいません。
Sorry about that.
I think we wanted to, I don't know if Claudia wanted to continue or if Elizabeth wanted to
I had
jump
one
in.
more question, if I may.
Okay.
So I was very surprised in watching these. I had never seen the horse puppets, and I'm curious if you could give us a little insight into how they function.
So この作品の中に馬が出てきてますけれど、馬はどのように操られていらっしゃいますか？
例えば、歌舞伎なんかですと、馬の中に2人前足と後ろ足が入って、その上に人が乗れるような形を作るんですね。
So for example, there are kabuki performance they use the horse, and that time you have one person dealing with the front leg, 2 legs, and then the other person dealing with the back 2 legs, and then sometimes the actors actually hop on top of that horse.
文楽さんの場合はけこみって言って舞台の地面の演技がよりも下で使っていくので、一人の人がその馬を担いで、足がブラブラになってるんですけども、それで演技をしていきます。
So the Bunraku, the Osaka puppet theater, they deal with one puppet with 3 people. They actually have a horse dealt by one person who holds it on top of their shoulder, and then the puppet goes on top of it, but you don't see the puppet's legs. They're not going to be manipulated by the puppeteer, but that's how they show the horse on the stage.
車人形という場合は舞台の上を直接人形が歩けるスタイルなんですね。ですから実は今ちょっと申しますけども、こういう車があります。これの上に乗って人形を使うんですが、馬も同じようにこの車の上に座って人形を使います。
So kuruma ningyo is totally different. That all the puppets going to be performing on stage live, and on top of that cart or the cart wheel, and so the horse is going to be on top of that as well.
馬は上からかぶるようになるんですが、前足が実は、この車人形の足っていうのがこういうふうな形で、こうですね、ちょっと足を掴めるような形になるんですね、足の指で。
はい、
ですから前足は動くんです。後ろ足はちょっと動きませんけども、前足だけは動いて、この舞台の上を自由に走り回ることができるという形。
それは手で持ってるわけですか？足。い
や、足は自分の足で挟みます。足の指で挟みます。
So to manipulate the puppet's legs, they usually put the puppet's legs little hook part between their big toe, and then they manipulate it, and that's how he's holding the leg. But that goes to between their toes, and that's how they deal with the leg part. で馬はそうすると
馬の胴体をかぶりまして、で、人形の馬の顔は長く棒がなっているので下で操作するようになる。ですから口が開いたり耳が動いたりっていうこともできる。
じゃあ馬と人形同時にいっぺんにやるわけですか？
人形は別ですけど。
人形は別。わかりました。
馬の胴体をかぶって、
わかりました。
そして人形の頭を持つという形。
わかりました。So the puppeteer, the one puppeteer is dealing with the one horse, and then the puppeteer will put on the horse costume, and the puppet part that they're manipulating the horse's ears and then eye part with the hands, and then they have their body part. That goes along with in front of the puppeteer's body. So that's how they manipulate it.
Great. Did we want to go to Elizabeth now?
Sure. This is so fascinating. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. I'm learning so much. As a literature scholar who's interested in the way literature gets adapted to the stage, I was really curious about both of these plays because if I'm understanding correctly, they both were created by and for the Hachioji card puppet troupe. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what you consider when you are creating a play adapted from an earlier story for the card puppet troupe.
そう、ベッセン先生の質問で、ベッセン先生自身は文学学者なので、とても面白くこの作品を見させていただいたんですけれども、この2つの作品は八王子車人形が作られたオリジナルの作品と理解してるんですけれども、古典の作品をベースに何か新しい作品を作られるときにどのようなことをお考えで制作に挑んでいらっしゃいますかということです。
そうですね、新しい作品はいろいろありますけども、基本的には我々っていうのはその浄瑠璃というか古典がベースなんですけども、それ以外に新しい作品を作る時っていうのはいろいろあるんですけども、時代物と世話物っていうのが日本の中にあります。時代物は武士の中のお話、世話物は町民の中のお話なんですけど、この辺で切っとこうかな。
そうです。はい、so they are using the old traditional puppet stories that's called joruri. They are dealing with that as well. And then within that, there are two different genres of stories. One is the jidaimono. It's stories dealing with the warriors, the bushi, the samurai. And the other one is called sewamono, the stories dealing with the town's commoners, people.
どちらの作品を作るかっていう時もあるんですけども、やはり、基本的にはどういうもの、私の方がどういうものの作品に取り掛かるかっていうことについて、それは自分の今まで生きてきた生き方とか、これから伝えるメッセージみたいなものを織り込めるような作品であったりとか、そしてもう一つ大事なところは、やはりお客様たちにも楽しんでいただけるような作品がどうしたものかというのを常に探しながら、その2つの要素を取り入れて新しい作品を作っているということになるんですけど。
So it depends on whichever the story that he's going to create, either the warrior stories or the common townspeople story. It depends. But whenever he tries to create a new puppet theater stories, he tries to incorporate his own message that he wants to pass on to the next generation. He puts into the puppet story, and also he wants the audiences to enjoy the story itself and to see the puppet theater as well. And so that's what he usually tries to think about when he creates the new productions.
Thank you. And I was particularly, as someone who studies Tale of the Heike, interested in Atsumori's death, which is unusual in that you replaced the Gidayu chanter with a biwa performer. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the process of turning that story into a puppet play, and particularly at what point you decided to use a biwa player, and when you decided to use the flute, which is such a lovely way to underline Atsumori's identity as a musician from the Tale of the Heike.
そう、ベス先生平家物語のスペシャリストなのでこれを見ててすごくその琵琶が使われていることに対してとっても、面白いとお感じになられて、で平家物語のその琵琶の語りを人形劇の作品に仕立てた過程についてお教えください。それからどのようにして琵琶奏者を語り手として採用されようと考えて、それからまた流笛も笛も入れられようとお考えになられたか教えてください。ちなみに笛を入れられたのは平家物語で笛の名手として、登場する熱森のアイデンティティにとても沿っていて、とても素敵な方法だと思いましたということです。
そうですね。平家物語についてはですね、琵琶っていうのはやはりその音曲で語り継がれてきたものなんですね。琵琶自体が、 8世紀、7世紀、8世紀ぐらいに伝わってきたものなので、浄瑠璃よりもその前からもう語り物として継がれてきたものなんですね。ですから、特にこの平家物語のこの感情っていうか、特に敦盛のあの場面っていうのは、もちろん義太夫には組打ちというのがあるんですけども、それよりもその琵琶でのどっちかっていうと和製ミュージカルっぽいのかな。でそんなところで戦の苦しみとか悲しみとかっていう、それがすごくこう徐々でこう義太夫以上に、浄瑠璃以上に表現されたのが琵琶だったんですね。ですから、そこでその琵琶でここを使っていこうということにこうなりました。で、いいですよ。
So the biwa passed down, or biwa came, the instruments, it's like a pipa. That instrument came to Japan sometime around 7th or 8th centuries, which is much older music and instruments than the gidayu or the shamisen music that came in around the mid 15th century or so. And so compared to that, he wanted to create kind of like a mixture of the Japanese style itself, and he thought it's more appropriate that the biwa expresses more of these wartime suffering and also sadness. And he thought that the biwa itself expresses those kind of emotions much better or more than the joruri, which uses the shamisen, the 3 strings music. And so that's why he thought it would be perfect to incorporate into his puppet theater instead of the regular gidayu, the shamisen music.
それでその流敵っていうのがありましたけども、これは先ほど先生がお話ししたように敦盛が好んでというか名手の一人だったんですね。特にその前の場面のところで分かると思いますけども、妻のその音とその2人の別れの時に、言葉ではなくてそのはおこと、敦盛はお笛で、その音楽で自分たちの心の表現をしたっていうところがとってもあって、でやはり特にその最後の場面には熊谷がその敦盛の笛を持ってその思いでそこにこう置いていくっていう、やはりその笛っていうのはこの作品の中でとっても重要視されているところなんですね。それで流敵をそこにこう入れるっていうことにしました。
So the original story depicts Atsumori as the famous flute player. He was very specialized in it. And then so this puppet theater, he thought that it would be more appropriate to have him playing the flute along with his wife, who was very good at playing the koto. And so those ensemble together expresses their emotions as, basically they are in love. And then it's just kind of like a sadness of being apart afterwards. But he thought that it's best to include those instrument performance on stage to show them that they're together, or togetherness itself. And also at the end of the puppet show that you saw, the Kumagai no Naozane, the warrior, he basically leaves the flute to dedicate to the soul of the past Atsumori. And then that really signifies how important this instrument, the flute itself, is in this story, and also the character of Atsumori. So that's what he was thinking as he was creating this production.
I think we wanted to go to Claudia next.
Yeah, I think I'm going to pick up on the theme of the music, because I know also that Hachioji Kuruma Ningyo Company has worked with a lot of different kinds of music, and I'd just like to hear a little bit about how that influences the performer, what he feels about working with all of the different kinds of music. I mean, has it changed the performance, and does it change the kata?
そう、人形使いとして、いろいろな種類の、先ほどのように義太夫だけじゃなくて琵琶とかと共演されてると思いますけれども、その他の種類の音楽とも共演されてるようでしたら、それについてもお聞きさせていただけると嬉しいです。型とかもしありますでしょうか。その義太夫の時はこうとか、説教節の時はこうとか。
そうですね。それはちょっと目標ですけども、でもちょっとお話をしますと、
はい、
日本に残る人形浄瑠璃の公演をしているところの約9割以上がその義太夫節で公演をしているんですね。
はい。
で、車人形はもともと最初は説教節から始まったものなんです。で、後にその義太夫とかいろんな音楽、浪曲、日本の和芸、和芸っていうと落語とか講談みたいなものを取り入れるように演技をしていきました。
So 90% of the puppet theater, they use the gidayu, the shamisen, the 3-string lute music. But kuruma ningyo, their main music is the sekkyobushi. I don't know how to translate the sekkyobushi into English. It's a type of the narrative song, correct?
Sometimes people say sermon plays.
Sermon plays,
they
okay.
Related.
So it's like an old style, the puppet theater music. That's what they're using. はい、すいません。
そういうところがあって、車人形っていうのはどこでも太夫さんをこう抱えているんですよね。でも昭和50年ぐらいですから、1970年前後っていう、実は一回それが絶えてしまうんですね。でそこで車人形っていうのはその義太夫に、先代が義太夫に切り替えたりで、自分たちが太夫さんを持たないことによって他のジャンルの人たちの音楽でも人形表現ができるんではないかということで、そのいろんなその他の浄瑠璃もそうですけども、その和芸みたいなものを取り入れて公演をするようになりました。
じゃあ普通の文楽の時はこの義太夫さんってこう必ず決まってるわけなんですか？
義太夫の太夫さんたちが何人か大勢いらっしゃいますから、
はい、
文楽さんの場合はで、我々はそういうふうな大きなあれではないので。
そうなんですか。
で、その都度義太夫は義太夫協会さんとかっていう義太夫を専門にやってるところ、他の音楽プロの人たちとこういろんなものでこう合わせて、それからこういろんなジャンルのものをこう表現をするっていうことにしたんですね。
なるほど、わかりました。So, what he was saying is that in the Osaka Bunraku, the puppet theater, they are much bigger in productions. So they have their designated musicians dedicated to perform for their puppet theater. However, the Kuruma Ningyo, their production is much smaller. And so they don't really have any designated musicians, especially this Gidayu people to perform. And so they have more free ways of asking who to incorporate into this production or that production, and so they have more freedom to choose the musicians.
なぜそんな他のジャンルをこうするかっていうと、現代社会の若い人たち、僕よりも下の年齢でやっぱり浄瑠璃っていうのは難しいという声が多いんですね。でやっぱり分かりにくいし難しいしちょっと面白くないかなっていう、ところがあるわけですよね。でもその浄瑠璃にこう来てもらうための入り口としてそのいろんな作品の新しい作品の中でその他のそういう分かりやすい芸とかそういうものをこう取り入れることによってその以後をまた見てもらうために浄瑠璃にまた来てもらうというその入り口のために最初いろんな形でこう表現をして講演をしていたんですね。
So for the younger generation, the joruri, the music and singing narrative style music that's used in the puppet theater, that looks oh, that sounds a little bit old and not so cool style of music. And so for him, he thought it's more important to open up the gateway for those youngsters to basically be exposed for the other types of music, and to basically open up the floor for them, so that later on maybe they watch this puppet theater and then they might think, oh, the joruri might be fun to listen to again, and so they might try to go to that route later on. So that's what he's hoping to achieve by incorporating other types of music into his production.
で日本のその浄瑠璃っていうのはたくさんあるんですね。義太夫はもちろん筆頭に置いといておくんですけども、例えば、さっき言った説教節、それから、江戸の新内浄瑠璃、それから常わず一中節、まあ他にもあるんですけども、そしてその他に皆さんよく聞く、例えば歌舞伎で使うその長唄、京都の方でいる小唄、羽唄、これ江戸のものですね。あと地唄とかっていう、歌がつくものは歌物っていうんですね。浄瑠璃ではなくて歌物ですから、この音源としては浄瑠璃と歌物って分かれていくわけでございますね。
So there are different types of the older musical genres, but he's saying that there are not the kuruma ningyo not just deal with the joruri, just only for the puppet theater music, those narrative and singing chanting style, but they also incorporate other types of we call the musicologists call it as the old traditional song styles or narrative songs. One of them is the Edo Shinnai joruri. So that's one type of designated for the old Tokyo songs, for the puppeteer songs, and also tokiwazu, ichibushi. Those are kind of more of a narrative song. It's not so melodic. It's more of a storytelling style of music, and those are considered as the koten and the old style of music. But they also incorporate the utamono, which is more singable and melodic songs that's used in the kabuki theater, which is the nagauta, the long song, and also kouta and hauta. Kouta is the one that I actually deal with, that it's passed on in the geisha quarters, and then so very short and then very, very singable, and it's catchy songs, and also the jiuta, which is more of the Kyoto based songs, but those kind of they divide those genres into two. One is the utamono, the singing songs, and then the other one is the narrative songs. But they actually deal all of them into this kuruma ningyo production, so which is a very vast variety. すごいですね、こんなにたくさんされるとは。
ですからほとんどのその人形芝居というのはその説教節と義太夫しかやってなかったんですけども、我々はそのほとんど人形と合わせてないその他のジャンルの人たちとそういうふうに芝居を作るようになりました。
So many of the puppet theaters, not the kuruma ningyo, but other puppet theaters, they tend to use only of those puppet theater music, narrative music, and that's all. But the kuruma ningyo, they wanted to incorporate more newer style and other styles that's not dedicated for the puppet theater songs. They wanted to bring it into their productions more to make it more newer and fun.
I think we have time for
okay.
I think we have time for a couple of more questions because we're getting to the end of our discussion period, and I think Elizabeth had a question coming up.
Well, just quickly, this is also interesting, and I like the way that this is about. It's about performance today as well as about kind of looking back. And I was with Atsumori's departure, I was just curious about the kind of process of taking a Sekkyobushi text and turning it into a play today. Who all is involved in that? What kinds of people collaborate on that, and how does that process work?
そう、説教節が先生の、作品に使われてると思いますが、それを作る過程においてどんな人たちがこうその説教節を作られて、そのセリフとか詩に関して携わってますかっていうのをお聞きしたいとです。
説教節っていうのはもともとその古浄瑠璃ですので、昔から伝わってきたものなんですけども、もともとの説教節をちょっと、説教節と義太夫はちょっと違いを簡単に言いますと、義太夫の場合っていうのは300以上の節回し、要はメロディーがあるわけですね。で、それに引き換え説教節っていうのは48節しかないんですよ。で、それは何かっていうと、お坊さんたちが日本中をこうご説法して歩きましたよね、その時代に。
はい、
でその説法だけでは人が集まらなくなったので、そのお経の節回しを使ってその浄瑠璃を語ったところから、その説教節っていうのが始まるんですね。ですからどっちかというと、その義太夫は300以上ある節回しっていうのはどっちかというと音楽的要素がとっても強いものなんです。それに引き換え説教節っていうのは音楽要素よりもその語るという、言葉で語って聞かせるという要素がとっても強い。ですから節回しが少ないっていうことなので、表現としてはすごく動きにくいといえば動きにくいんですけども、その素朴感みたいなものっていうのはとっても義太夫にはない素朴感っていうのがその説教節にあったりしますので、そんなところでこうものを使い分けていくっていうことになります。そしてその他のこの曲に対してはこの音楽がいい、この曲に対してはこういうジャンルのものを使っていこうというので、車人形っていうのはその自由が利くというところがすごくいいところなんですね。
So, what he was saying. So he was saying that one of the puppet theater music is called Gidayu, which was made by Takemoto Gidayu. But that style of music incorporates about 300 different types of melodic passages. However, the sekkyoboshi that he incorporated into his puppet theater display, that only includes about 48 different types of melodic passage, which is a lot less than the other one. And this sekkyobushi actually started by the monks chanting and a sutra, and that became a little bit more melodic. However, it's not as musical as the other types of the Gidayu and other puppet theater music. And so it's more suitable of telling the story about what Buddha did, and then those sutra, what it's that teaching itself. And so for him, for the puppeteer, it's actually harder to move the puppet along with that, because it's not as melodic as or rhythmic as other type of regular type of the music that he usually perform. But that actually gives a more simpleness of the performance, and also it makes it easier for the kuruma ningyo to incorporate other types of genres of music, because they're more flexible and to collaborate with other musical genres. So that's what you say.
あとその熱森の歌詞みたいなものがどうやって作られたかっていうところなんですけど、これちょっと詳しくはよく分かってないんですけどなぜかっていうと琵琶のところはもともとあった作品ですから、そのまま使用できたんですけども、はい、熱森の、最後のその前のところっていうのはその公演が国立劇場で決まった時にその前を作っていこうということで、国立劇場の議芸員の方がではその作を作りましょうということで、この作品を手がけたんですけど、ですからいろんな要素を取り入れて、もちろん義太夫の中の要素も取り入れたり、説教節も取り入れたりとかっていう、古浄瑠璃に残ってた作品を手直しをしてというところもあったと思いますけども、そしてその前の、作品を作ったということになるんですけど。
あ、そうですか。そう、
うん、
そうすると、後半の部分はもともとあったわけ
そうです。
ですか？
ビワの部分はもとも
ビワの部分。
とあった。
あ、そう、so the biwa, the lute musical section, that part has already existed before. But what they did was they added the first half part, and based on the国立劇場で演奏されたわけで、そのために作られたんですか？
その時に作ったものなんです。
あ、そうですか。
初演が国立劇場でやったものですから。
あ、そうですか。So, the first half was created just for the performance that was done at the 国立劇場, which is National Theater. Is that what you call it? 国立劇場. And so that was created just for that occasion, for the performance for the National Theater.
Great. I really appreciate this discussion, but we're getting to the end of our time. So I think we wanted to go to Claudia, who had last question or questions. Oh, you're muted, Claudia.
My last question is that I'm the films that we saw, they were done a while ago, and I'm wondering if you've done these performances more recently and if your relationship to the performance has changed in that time.
そう、先生もこの最近もこちらの2作品を上演されてますか？で、それで上演されるときは時が経つにつれてこの作品とか登場人物との関係性にどんな変化が見られますか？
ですね、ビワではなかなかちょっとやる機会が少ないんですけども、今義太夫ですと組打ちの段というさっきここの同じ作品の中の作品は義太夫や信内浄瑠璃でも公演をしてます。
あ、そうですか。So he hasn't performed with the lute, the biwa, for a while, but he has been using the joruri, the shamisen narrative singing part along with it. 組打ちの段とおっしゃいました。
組打ちですね。はい。
はい。組打ちの段は
同じところの場面です。
同じところ、あ、そうですか。the same scene that you have seen, so that he replaced the shamisen music for that.
で、特にこの作品っていうのは、熱森と熊谷次郎のほとんど中心はこの2人だけなんですね、出てくるのは。
So this play only involves with two characters. One is the Atsumori and then Kumagai, and that was it.
ですからこの2人でその戦の辛さとかいろんなものが表現されてるんですね。ですからそこの感情表現っていうのは僕たちが僕が例えば最初の頃ってまだ本当に子供もいないような母性もないようなそんな心境だったんですけども年を取るにつれて自分の息子たちやその子供たちそれに対する愛情とか思いとかっていうのがそこにどんどん重なっていくわけですよね。そうすると感情の表現っていうのがやはり年を取ることによって重ねることによってその思いというか表現方法っていうのは少しずつ変わってきます。
So these only two characters present on stage, and they're trying to portray those wartime sorrow and suffering and everything, and just using just those two characters. And then when he was performing that earlier, when he didn't have his own child, he didn't know basically how to express, the emotional insertion for the puppet itself. But now he has his own son, his family, and then now he has more emotions and to basically express through these two characters. And so it's getting more and more deeper for himself to perform this play.
I want to thank you. We've reached the end of this very short amount of time we've had to discuss these two films, Death of Atsumori, and Departure of Atsumori. But I wondered if Mr. Nishikawa might share with us some plans to tour in the US in the fall of 2022.
もう時間が短くなって申し訳ないんですけれども、最後にこれから、先生のツアーについて教えていただきたいですって。
はい。今これからお稽古が始まったりするんですけども、来年の1月の末からシカゴの公演が始まっていきます。そして2月にずっと回っていって、ピッツバーグの大学、コロンビア大学もそうですけども、最後にニューヨークの方で今年が公演をすることが決まっております。で、今回の作品は日本の、文学の芥川龍之介の作品をベースに、その芥川の作品の中で芥川のその思い、生きるというか、これから未来にどう向かっていくのかとかというその作品をピックアップして、皆さんに、見ていただこうと思っております。
はい。Okay, so he will be touring to the United States starting next January next year, starting from Chicago and Pittsburgh, and he'll be coming to New York as well. And he will be performing some Ryunosuke Akutagawa works. He said there are about a couple of works that he is in hand, but he has to start practicing pretty soon. That will start, but he will be basically coming into the US next year. So please wait for their information.
で、あと、この作品っていうのは、そのアメリカ側のトム・リーという、人形使いと一緒のコラボの2作品目になりますけど、ぜひそのアメリカと日本のその合同作品なので、楽しんでいただければと思います。
So he'll be performing a collaborative work with the Tom Lee, who is an American puppeteer. He's going to be, this is going to be his second production with him, but he's looking forward to performing with him again.
Great. Thank you so much. I hope we all get to see your performances starting next January in the United States. And including your collaborations with Tom Lee. And I hope there'll be more opportunities to learn more about your amazing work. I want to thank Mr. Nishikawa and also Yuko Wright for translating, and our guest discussants, Elizabeth Oyler and Claudia Orenstein. Thank you so much for being part of this this event in World Epics of Puppetry, which Joanne Cavallo of Columbia University has initiated. The next event will be Wednesday, May 25th, focused on India. It will feature a screening of the shadow puppet production About Ram, and be followed by a discussion with puppeteer Anurupa Roy and Professor Paula Richmond of Oberlin College. So thank you all so very much for being part of this, and thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you.
ありがとうございました。